This presentation will look at who Rocco Perri was, what he became during the Prohibition, and how his actions made him the bootlegger king talked about in many news reports and books. First, we will look at his background, where he came from, and what drove him to immigrate to the Niagara Peninsula, and continue on to his tendencies to mix his love life with business later on. From this, we will look at his career in organized crime and the events that eventually led to his disappearance in 1944. Born in Italy in 1887, Rocco's birth date and exact location are debated among different publications, where some claim he was born in Calabria, while others claim Pilati, and that he was born on either December 30th or December 27th. At the age of 10, his mother died, and by the time he turned 15 in 1903, he moved to the U.S., where he lived for 5 years before moving to live in St. Catharines, Ontario in 1908, and finally Toronto in 1912. When Perri met his well-known lover and criminal partner, Bessie Starkman, while boarding with her and her husband, the two of them ran away from Starkman's family and eventually settled in Hamilton, Ontario, when Prohibition first took effect. The two of them combined their skills and began working together, starting from the mob neighborhoods of Hamilton, Ontario, until they had grown enough to expand into prostitution, gambling, and even extortion. Now, the legal loopholes in the Prohibition were many and easy to manipulate, especially given the corruption both in the political system and also in the law enforcement sector of those days, and so it was much easier than expected for the two criminal lovebirds to expand their empire and its operations. Eventually, Perri and Starkman became quite famous, and even sat down in an interview with a local newspaper called the Daily Star to discuss their empire, without fear of prosecution from the law, and landed him the title King of the Bootleggers. Perri and Starkman were reported making many remarks that would shame the legal and political system. However, it was Starkman's encouragement throughout the entire interview that has led many people to question who the true leader of the empire was. It was after this that things began to slide downhill for Perri and Starkman. For in 1927, upper levels of authorities, both in the U.S. and Canada, took notice and tried them both for perjury, at which point Perri served 5 months in Guelph prison in order to protect his common-law wife after striking up a deal with the authorities. His efforts were in vain, though, as Starkman was assassinated outside their home on August 13, 1930, and he grieved her loss until the mid-1930s, when he found Annie Newman and continued his cooperative work with her, another difference being that by this time the Prohibition was over. However, this did not last long, for Frank Zaneth, an RCMP operative, arrested him at the beginning of World War II for breaking the War Measures Act and continuing to smuggle alcohol, though some may argue that he was arrested for being sympathetic to Italian fascism and turned into Petawawa. Whatever the case may be, he was released in 1943 and returned to his home in Hamilton only to find his business overtaken by a buffalo mob, and by the summer of 1944, he had disappeared completely. Some claim that he is in a barrel of cement at the bottom of Hamilton Bay, despite the claims of others that he did not die, accompanied by unsubstantiated proof that he organized his disappearance and lived out his years in upstate New York until the early 1950s. Whichever claim is true, however, the fact remains that he was last seen alive on April 23, 1944. At least, He was last recognized on this date, as there is no information that is conclusive about when or where he died that is available.